Zero to Python day 7, let's get into it. So today is all about text formatting, and the reason we're getting into text formatting now is that the more complex our text output becomes, the more we have to have better tools to deal with that complexity. And that's where text formatting comes in. What we're going to get into is basically two ideas: string concatenation and string interpolation. And those are two very related ideas. Basically, one is combining strings together, that's string concatenation, and string interpolation is basically taking variables and injecting them into the strings. So we'll be getting into both of those today in our lesson starting right now. All right, so let's get started. Here on the screen, we have basically the same output, like the same code as the day before, but I've pulled in here two things. One, I've pulled in the new screen output code and commented out, and then the view screen. And this is to basically make sure that we are matching our current sort of designs in that way. So what we're going to do quick is, just looking at this, we're going to add these little print statements around them just to make it a little bit easier to see where we're at screen wise. Okay, so this is our input, this is that. Now, one thing that I've kind of noticed is that we would definitely want a new line after this input. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that so it gives us more of that feel of what we're doing. So let's go ahead and run this, and let's say 1/1/2023, and then let's just write some text. So if you look at this, right, the output that we had before, we were doing this input, and then there was a new line and so on and so forth, and this gave us pretty much that. So that gives us a nice, like, there's a new line there, there's a new line after. That all kind of works. So that's in a pretty good spot. That's really what we want. And then the next thing that we're going to do here is basically, there are other ways that we could print out some of this. So for example, say we wanted to add the date to the output. Now this doesn't match the output perfectly, but this is good for basically what we're trying to get to. So imagine we wanted the output with the date especially to match the input, right? So maybe you want to prepend the word date here, so maybe it kind of matches. Right now, that's kind of tricky to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to use what's called string concatenation. So what this will do is this will make it where you can say date that, and we're going to concatenate. That means to basically add together two strings. So we're basically just sort of connecting them. And in Python, you use this little plus thing, which normally looks like math, but in the case of strings, is just like adding them together. So let's go ahead and run that. 1/1/2023, ABC, this is text. Okay, so notice that now we have the date prepended before this, so it comes before. And that's pretty good. However, if you kind of look at the output, we actually had the date with a new line. So let's actually add a new line and remove the date. So again, same kind of process. We're just going to add an extra new line, and then we're going to remove the date. And then let's run that. This is some text. Right, so you notice that now it outputs with that new line afterwards, which definitely matches this. So you have the date output, some new line, and then you have the text and so on and so forth. So this is getting a lot closer, and this is a lot better. So that's how you combine strings together using string concatenation, and that works pretty well. However, there's another thing you can do that is called string formatting. And you can use what Python calls formatted strings. So this is a very similar idea, but it kind of comes at it from a different way. So currently we're combining strings, but what if we had like a really long complex string? So let's say we wanted to put the date back in there and put that together. You can start to see how this would be start to get a little ugly, right? Like say you had some other stuff too that you wanted to put out, like other stuff, and then maybe another like variable you wanted to put in there. So, you know, journal text, that kind of thing, right? Like when you start having to combine a lot of text together like this approach becomes pretty ugly and not fun to use. So this is where string formatting comes in. So the way string formatting works is this in Python 3, and I believe this is a Python 3 specific feature. The first thing you do is you put an F before the front quote on your string. This tells Python it's a formatted string. And instead of using concatenation, we are going to use these little curly brackets. So if you put something inside of a curly bracket, this allows us to use a formatted string, and the sort of technical term that you'll see in a lot of different programming languages is string interpolation. So you have string concatenation, which is where you combine things, concatenate them, and then you have interpolation, where you basically take a formatted string and then you interpolate the variables into them. So you basically take a sort of formatted string and some variables, and the machine combines it together in software. String interpolation. It's a lot of words to basically say it looks like this. So you have this formatted string, and then you take your variable and you just use these curly brackets to tell the Python that it is going to be a variable inside there. So if we go ahead and run that, 1/1/2023, this is some text, yay. I obviously misspelled yay. But as you can see, it did what we wanted to do. So you have the date here, and then you have the variable here, and you still have the new line. So it's interpolated our journal date variable into the middle of this formatted string, which is what we want. And in a lot of cases, formatted strings have kind of the double bonus of they handle complexity a little bit better than concatenation does, especially if you have multiple variables. And it also makes something like makes your output cleaner and a little bit more human understandable, because it's a lot easier on a complex string to start to just look at a formatted string than concatenating a bunch of strings and variables together. So we will probably be using that approach quite a bit. Now, just for fun, and this is kind of where the meat and potatoes ends, and we get into some bonus fun. So I'm going to copy this and show you something kind of wacky. Call it bonus fun. All right, so if you were to take our whole output here, you can actually combine it into a single formatted string. In this case, we're going to use an extreme example of this, but check this out. You could actually copy this bonus fun bit into here, and then as you can tell, there should be a new line after that print statement. So let's get rid of that. Like, let's add that new line in there, and let's get rid of that print statement. And then we've got the rest of it in there, but then you've got a new line, a second new line. Let's add our journal text via interpolation, another new line, another, let's see, there's one new line there, and then a second one. This should be pretty dang close. So we can actually combine all of those print statements into a long and vaguely ridiculous print statement here, and it should, fingers crossed, output what we want. So let's run it. So check that out. Our same output here is the same, but look, we can get the exact same result of the output plus the bonus fun by simply putting it all on a single line. Now, obviously, there are limits to what you'd want to do with this, because If you could imagine this becoming way too long, at some point that's not easy to work with either. And you'll definitely run into this when you say work with certain HTML templates, which kind of have a similar approach. But for now, it's good to understand that in some cases, this is a really nice option. Not in all cases, but in some cases. So that's your code for today. Go check out the assignment. Today's assignment is very simple. Go through the string concatenation version of what we just did, and then go through the string interpolation version and basically make both of those work and get a feel for how both of them work. Play around with them a little bit, try some different things. And then for some bonus fun, you can definitely try what if all the output was from a single print statement via a long formatted string. That's a good exercise to do. It'll definitely teach you a lot about what is and isn't maybe a good idea. You don't necessarily want to lean on that too heavily as time goes on because it can get out of control in a hurry, but it is good to know that that solves a certain kind of problems. So that's day 7. Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.